Every single time you flip a light switch, or charge your phone, or just look at a city skyline at night, you're living in a world that was pretty much built by one man. Today we're getting into the incredible story of Nikola Tesla, a true genius who basically invented our future, but his own story, well, it ended in a quiet, lonely tragedy.
So let's set the scene. The story actually begins at its end. In a hotel room that he'd called home for a decade, one of the greatest minds in history was found, having passed away completely and utterly alone.
And that's the thing that's so hard to wrap your head around. This is a man who held over 300 patents, a man who invented the very system that powers our entire planet, and yet he had nothing. He spent his last days living on warm milk and crackers, and his only real friends were the pigeons he'd feed in the park.
So that's the big question, isn't it? How on earth does the guy who invented our modern world end up like this? How does this brilliant visionary, this supposed child of light, just fade into nothing? To figure that out, we have to go all the way back to the beginning.
All right, let's get into it. Our investigation starts here, trying to understand how a mind that literally lit up the world could end up so lost in the shadows.
And that brings us to his origins. Born of lightning, his birth was just as dramatic and electric as his life's work would end up being.
So get this. Tesla was born in what's now Croatia, right at the stroke of midnight during a massive lightning storm. The midwife saw it as a bad omen, but his mother's words, wow, they turned out to be unbelievably prophetic, didn't they?
From a really young age, it was clear Tesla's mind was, well, on a completely different level. He had an eidetic memory, which he got from his mom, but he was also haunted by these intense flashes of light and visions. He could imagine, build, and even test incredibly complex inventions entirely inside his own head. He perfected them so completely that he almost never had to draw any blueprint.
So, after moving to America, Tesla's genius pretty much immediately throws him into this epic battle with his old boss, the one and only Thomas Edison. And they weren't just fighting over patents, they were fighting over the future itself.
Okay, so you gotta understand, this wasn't just some petty rivalry. This was a war for the blueprint of the modern world. Edison was all in on direct current, or DC, which was kind of weak and couldn't travel very far. But Tesla, he perfected alternating current, or AC. It was a vastly superior system that could move huge amounts of power over hundreds of miles. We're talking the difference between powering a single city block and powering an entire nation.
Edison saw the writing on the wall. He knew his tech was about to become obsolete, so he launched a nasty, vicious smear campaign. To prove how dangerous AC was, he publicly electrocuted stray animals and even financed the development of the very first electric chair, making absolutely sure it ran on his rival's alternating current. It was a brutal, public war of ideas.
But in the end, you just can't fight better technology. Tesla partnered up with the industrialist George Westinghouse, and they put on a show. They lit up the entire 1893 Chicago World's Fair. Can you imagine? 27 million people were just completely blown away. Then, they harnessed the raw power of Niagara Falls. The war was over. AC had won, hands down.
Now, this should have been the moment Tesla became one of the wealthiest men alive. But right here, at the peak of his greatest triumph, he made a decision that would answer our opening question and seal his financial fate forever.
See, even though they won the war of currents, the fight had left Westinghouse's company on the verge of collapse. He was millions in debt and just couldn't afford to pay Tesla the royalties he was owed for the patents. He went to Tesla, his friend, basically in a desperate plea to save his company.
In this moment, right here, it tells you everything you need to know about who Tesla was. He wasn't driven by money. He was driven by progress and by loyalty. Westinghouse was the one man who had believed in him when nobody else would. So out of gratitude, Tesla tore up his royalty contract, giving up all of his future earnings. And let's be crystal clear about what this meant. He walked away from what would be worth over $300 million today, and honestly, probably a whole lot more over time. That single act of compassion saved Westinghouse, but it cost Tesla a fortune that would have made him one of the richest men on Earth.
But Tesla's mind didn't just stop with AC power. He started working on ideas that were even more radical, things the world truly just wasn't ready for.
I mean, we're talking about stuff we take for granted now. He was pioneering X-ray imaging. At an exhibition in 1898, think about that, 1898, he demonstrated the world's first remote-controlled device, a little boat. The audience thought it was actual magic. But his biggest dreams were even grander: radio, wireless communication, and even transmitting energy through the air itself, no wires needed.
But this is where his life takes a really tragic turn. A fire completely destroys his lab, wiping out years and years of research. As he's trying to rebuild, this guy Guglielmo Marconi, backed by powerful people like Edison, successfully sends a radio signal using Tesla's own patented technology. Then the final blow. The patent office, for reasons that are still kind of murky, just reverses its decision and gives the patent for radio to Marconi. Tesla's financial backers abandon him, and he was left in ruin.
He would spend the rest of his life chasing his dreams, but he never really recovered, financially or professionally. And yet, while the man himself was forgotten, his vision was quietly taking over the world.
So what's the big takeaway from all this? Well, the AC power grid he designed is the backbone of our civilization. His motors are in everything from your car to your vacuum cleaner. The very unit we use to measure magnetic fields is named the Tesla in his honor. His work laid the foundation for radio, remote control, and all the wireless tech we love. He was truly a pioneer.
In the end, Tesla's story isn't just about genius. It's about the cost of that genius. He wasn't a capitalist. He was a creator who valued the betterment of humanity way more than his personal wealth. So how did the man who invented the modern world die penniless? Because he chose to. He gave it all away. And that child of light continues to illuminate our world every single day.